Welcome to When We Die Talks. I'm your host, Zach Ansell. In this podcast, we explore different beliefs about what happens when we die and how those ideas shape the way we live. Thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you're here. Today's episode is brought to you by Amori. How was your first Christmas without your mom? How was your wedding day without your dad? If you know the pain of losing someone you deeply loved, Amori is for you. Amori is a digital time capsule that helps you reflect on mortality, navigate emotions, and create heartfelt messages for your children, so you can feel prepared and let your presence be felt through life's many moments, even when you're no longer here. Let your words become a source of strength and comfort for those you leave behind. Tomorrow isn't promised, but your love can be. Download your mortality companion today at amori.life. That's AMORI.life, and use the code WhenWeDie50 for 50% off.
Hey everyone, we're back with a new episode today, and you're going to have to bear with me during this intro. I held off recording as long as I could in hopes of kicking this cold, but as you probably can hear, I'm still fighting it off. I unfortunately got super sick during my meditation retreat and had to leave early, so I'm still in recovery mode. But we still have a new episode today with an amazing guest who's been a quiet force behind this project for a while. In fact, when we first met, Maura encouraged me to turn When We Die Talks into a podcast. So in many ways, this episode feels like a full circle moment. Maura McInerney-Rowley is a death doula, former hospice director, and the creator of Hello Mortal and Death Archetypes, two powerful tools that help people engage more deeply with the reality of death and what it means for how we live. In our conversation, she shares her personal experience with loss, a moment that shifted her entire relationship with death, and the winding journey that's brought her to this work. We also talk about how Maura's beliefs around death and the afterlife are still evolving, and how sitting with uncertainty can actually open up space for curiosity, conversation, and growth. This one has been a long time coming, and I'm so excited for you to hear it. I hope you enjoy.
Well, actually, I know that you are responsible for this podcast in a huge way, because we met and you were like, you need to turn this into a podcast. And so like that planted the seed in my brain of like, maybe I should do this. So you are responsible for yet another thing in the death world.
We are. I'm so glad that you said yes. You took that seed and you watered it. You planted it. You did it.
Yeah. And awesome. I thank you for being helpful in, the early on process and the project and everything, and being a supporter. You have a fascinating story. I don't usually lay out credentials, and I'm probably going to mess up your credentials because there's so many things, but you're a death doula, a former hospice director. You created Hello Mortal and Death Archetypes, and obviously have been a huge supporter of this project and just, I think in general, people talking about death and making that a priority in people's lives. So yeah, and you've done it all. And so I don't know, I've talked to a lot of people, and I don't want to compare people or anything, but I feel like you have the most well-rounded accomplishment. Seems like a weird way of saying it, but a well-rounded, a diverse background with death, and then also how you've made it a huge part of your life in various ways. It's a big question to ask you, but the first question always is, what is your relationship with death? And like I just said, yours is very complicated because there's so many elements to it.
Yeah. I have career ADD. What is my relationship to death? I would say it's an evolving one. I was thinking so much about how I felt I wasn't prepared to answer some of these questions today because I'm still on the journey of research and discovery and all of that. And also ultimately, none of us know the answer to these questions, even if we form an opinion. I put pressure on myself that I have to have a very deep and philosophical answer. That's what people are expecting of me. And I'm just like, no, I'm just a human. And I've had these experiences and these are the things I'm interested in. I am not a, PhD. I'm not a scientist, whatever. But yeah, share some of my story.
I was going to say, maybe share some of your experiences with death.
Yeah. It's still a question I'm trying to figure out where to start too, because I am in the process of creating a pitch deck. I'm going to go out and try and fundraise for Hello Mortal, and I'm trying to have a succinct 30-second, 60-second elevator pitch. But where do you even begin? So I always end up just beginning at the start of my life, with the caveat of one thing that I haven't I have to decide how I'm going to share that eventually, but my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 5 years old. So from a very early age, illness was a part of growing up, was a part of my family. Intellectually at 5, I don't know if I really understood death or what that meant. I had many pets over my childhood that had come and gone, that had died. My dog, my golden retriever, Casey, that was a big one for me, where I think I first started to understand, okay, things that we love are here and then they're no longer here. And then I had a grandparent die and went through all of that. And then, my mom ended up dying, unfortunately, when I was in college, when I was a junior in college. And that actual year, I lost my mom, my grandmom, and my uncle. And it was a lot all at once. And there's like so much in that story too, like how my life went. But I would say that was the most like traumatic and transformational experience I've ever gone through. I feel grateful that I was able to be by my mom's bedside when she died. She was on hospice only for a short while, but I was able to be there with her and hold her hand and see her and all of that. Not everyone gets that chance. Yeah. And so that was my first experience with hospice. And after my mom died, I was like just so lost, so sad, angry, confused, all of it, all of the emotions. And I ended up a year later having my first powder day on a snowboard. And so if you ski or snowboard, you know what that feeling is like. If you don't, the next best thing is like, oh, it's the same feeling you get when you jump out of an airplane. And if you haven't done that yet either, it's just this like incredible natural high. And I felt like I was surfing on clouds. It was just mind-blowing to me. It was the first time I felt joy since my mom had died over a year ago. And so I decided I had to go chase that feeling. I had to live somewhere where I could snowboard. That was my only goal post-college. I had no idea what I was going to do for a career. I was living this sort of like go big or go home attitude because that, again, my relationship with death is ever evolving. Right after my mom died, it was a go big or go home, that you could die at any minute, any moment, and you can. That is still true today, but I've since leveled out a little bit.
Probably comes with age a little bit.
Comes with age, comes with the territory. And I moved to Aspen. So I looked at many mountain towns, but ultimately ended up in Aspen. And I started my career as a wedding planner. So I wasn't a ski bum. That's what people love to say. Oh, you were just a ski bum. And there's nothing wrong with being a ski bum. They've got it figured out, actually.
Especially if you're doing it in Aspen.
Yeah. I think they're living life pretty well. But I was like, I need a real job and I need to partly grow my career at the same time. So I ended up joining a woman named Virginia. She had her own company and I begged her to let me worked for her for free as an intern first. And then she brought me on full time eventually. And that was just a wild and crazy ride, those 2 years in Aspen. But that was also where my relationship with death changed a little bit. Like Aspen has this sort of dark side that I don't think a lot of people know about if you don't live there or spend time there, where there's a lot of suicide. There's also a lot of death just from adventure sports like skiing and backpack or climbing and all of that. And that was the first time like I actually knew of people who died in avalanches and were like, oh wow,
Yeah.
That was just eye-opening for me for some reason. I never really thought that was a thing until it happened.
It's a different kind of death, right?
It's a different kind of death, dying doing what they love and all of that, and also just, unexpected and whatnot. And so this is already becoming way too long of a story. I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Fast forward.
It's context.
It's context. I ended up moving to San Francisco because I was interested in startups, and I was able to like couch surf for a bit, and then was in San Francisco for 4 years in early stage startups and venture capital. And that is also sort of another moment where my relationship to death changed a little bit, I would say more internally. And I had this conversation with Naval Ravikant at one point that absolutely changed my entire perspective on how I was living my life at the time. I was deeply unhappy. I was feeling a lot of guilt for whenever I was feeling happy, because I would always think about, oh, my mom died. Like, you should be sad. You shouldn't be happy, really struggling with how to hold joy and grief at the same time and process my grief and all of that. And again, like, even that's a whole separate story and podcast. But had a conversation with him about how happiness is a choice, and that really changed my perspective. And at first, hearing that from him, I was like, oh, of course, like, easy for you to say, you're uber wealthy. Like, of course, happiness is a choice for you. I once read an article where you talked about how you didn't have to set an alarm clock because you just wake up when your body wants you to wake up. And I was like, that's nice.
Yeah.
So I was really angry at him, and I was angry at that statement. But a couple weeks went by and I couldn't get it out of my head. And I thought, I have nothing to lose. Like, I'm so deeply unhappy. What if I just choose to be happy? Like, let's experiment with this and see if it works. And it started to work, honestly. And I was like, okay, he's, onto something maybe. And obviously caveats there for people who have depression and are dealing with other issues. Like, it's not just a choice sometimes. But for me, in that moment, that perspective shift really helped get me out of a funk. And that's when I started, there were a lot of other things going on, but basically had made the decision I was going to try and go to business school. And then fast forward, ended up in Michigan for the Roth School of Business to get my MBA. And then it was the summer in between my first and second year of business school where I was at a wedding in Boulder, actually, for a couple friend of mine. The bride and I had met in Aspen, and we'd bonded over the fact that we had lost parents at a young age. Actually, in Aspen, I had met two people who had lost parents around the same age as me, and we became friends. And so, like, it definitely attracts a certain type of character in person.
Yeah.
Like, we're all seeking something. And so we have become really close. And she asked me to read a poem in her wedding about lost loved ones. And it's a beautiful, beautiful poem. And I said yes. But on the morning of her wedding, we were informed, unfortunately, that one of the guests who we'd been with the night before at the rehearsal dinner, drinking and dancing, the bride and groom's really great friend from college, had unexpectedly and tragically died. And anything that ever crosses your mind at a wedding, like, to find out that someone has died. And so immediately I was thinking, like, oh, like, are they going to still have the wedding? And, like, who's going to tell his parents who are across the country somewhere else that their son had died? And how are they going to get the body back? And, like, all of these things. So to totally set my mind into a flurry. And then it was the juxtaposition of the death at the wedding, since I had been a former wedding planner. And since I had experienced the death of my mom and grandparents and aunts and uncles, that I realized, like, damn, we spend over a year planning for weddings and we treat death like a pile of garbage. Like, we give it 2 weeks, and that's often not because we want to, but because we don't talk about it, we don't plan for it, and then we're in a crisis and that's all we have. And so that just didn't sit well with me at all. And then less than 24 hours later, I was on a plane to Alaska to go backpacking with a group of business school students, and was really lucky to have a guide leading us who was incredible and had just gone through the hospice experience with his own father who had died. And so him and I bonded, and we were talking about hospice and how awesome it would be if you could, if you could combine death and the wilderness somehow in hospice, and, like, have your last moments be in nature and all of that. And there's a longer, more in-depth story that just about that entire experience. But ultimately, I ended up going back to school with having spent a week in the wilderness, no cell phone, no internet, nothing to distract me, like, just my thoughts. And had the first day of class in school pitch a business idea. So I pitched this idea of wilderness hospice. And then I spent the entire semester researching the hospice industry, the funeral industry, and all of that, and doing customer discovery interviews. And really learning that, like, that area is outdated and fragmented, and there's a lot we can do to improve the end of life experience, the dying experience, death, grief, all of it for all of us, and that we'd be better off as a society as we did. But the last thing I'll say there is, as I dug further and further and further, ultimately I came back to the realization that until we normalize talking about this, until we decide that it's something we want to discuss, that trying to improve the industry is going to be, and the experience is going to be difficult. But ultimately, it will happen. It is happening. But we need to start here first, which is why I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
And sorry for that ramble.
No, it's good, because I think it's a lot of context of how you got to where you are now, and not to like, again, continue to like push you to talk more about what you're doing. But then you created Hello Mortal and the Death Archetypes, which are both very, very cool things.
So for people who don't know what Death Archetypes is, it's a contemplative personality test. I like to describe it as if Enneagram met Myers-Briggs, met horoscopes, and they had a baby. And so at its core, it's a tool for self-reflection, to spark conversation, to help you uncover your unconscious attitudes about mortality and how you view death. Because, right, most of us don't think about it or talk about it. So it can be surprising to read your results and say, oh, like, yeah, that really sounds like me, or, maybe not so much. And so there's 8 types. There's no wrong or right type. They're meant to be fluid, so they can change over the course of your lifetime based on your experiences and how you view the world. And that project was such a labor of love for me. It was an idea that I had, and I tapped a woman named Carolyn to help me bring it to life. And because I knew that it could be more than the initial sort of like MVP that I had developed. And she really helped me take it to the next level. And it was a project that I also came up with while I was becoming a death doula, and then eventually when I opened the hospice and was working in the hospice. So it has a lot of influence from my training and my time working in hospice, as well as just like my personal experiences and then the research in school. And it's so cool to me to see how like it's turned out, because it was just this like idea that I had. And now I'm being invited back to the business school at Michigan for a second time to give it as a workshop. It's been used at Boston University and then Stanford. We've also converted it to like host intimate dinners. And so I just think it has a lot of potential to help people get more comfortable with a subject that they're uncomfortable with. And whether that's like you don't know how to talk to your parents about death, or a partner or a sibling or a colleague, like whoever you want, yourself, that this tool enables you to break the ice. So yeah, I encourage everyone to try it. It's like, it takes like 3 minutes, go with your gut, just go through it. And of course you can always retake the test, and you can view all the other archetypes now. We made that update. So yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. I love it. And I'm always a sucker for like, there's book recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I'm like,
know.
I love this. And I think I've read 2 of the 3 of mine. And I think now I'll have to cross-reference the other archetypes and like find the other books and whatnot and read everything. But I love the idea also of like, I've been thinking about doing some sort of like death dinners. And so I love the idea of combining the archetypes into that a little bit, and like having that be like, hey, everybody do this beforehand, and like that being like a great starting place.
That's exactly how we host the dinners. Yeah. So if you're familiar with Death Over Dinner, that is like a full thing that's been happening for a long time now. Great organization. And they have your group like read or watch bite-sized material. And so I thought, oh, well, let's just use Death Archetypes. Like take the test before you come to dinner, and we'll use it at dinner to spark conversation. But like the whole dinner isn't about Death Archetypes. It's really just an icebreaker. And then we get
it's a jumping off point.
Exactly. And so it's helpful because you're like, oh, you're the Phoenix. I'm a Phoenix too. Or like, you're the lover. What's that? Tell me about it. So yeah, just a really simple, free way to do it. And that's my dream, is like, oh my gosh, if people wanted to host their own death archetype dinners or death dinners and use Death Archetypes as an icebreaker, that would just be a dream come true, because that's what the tool is made for to some extent, is like just run with it.
Well, I'll let you know when I do it here in Portland, and I'll like take photos or video and report back. But it's something that I want to do this summer, of just like another way of normalizing death, talking about death. I would love to like bring some people that I've interviewed and some people that haven't been interviewed, and like just have pizza or something and chat about death. So I think that also gives a building block of making that happen. So
total side tangent. One of my best friends lives near the Portland area, and she might have a baby shower. This is not summer, but in October, and I want to come out for it. So we should do we should do a second dinner in the fall in October. That would be so fun.
Yes, let's coordinate. Like, I'm happy to host or like find a place to do it or whatever. But like, yeah, let's absolutely do that. So yeah, we've gotten a lot of information about your kind of background and stuff. And now this is obviously it's why I started this project, my favorite question. But I'm so excited to ask you this question, because we've been kind of having like some little side conversations, and I know you were quote unquote sick last week, but I think that maybe you're like, I need another week to do some research to figure out what I actually believe happens when we die. But we've kind of chatted back and forth a little bit, and it seemed like, not that you were doing research, but I think you were like trying to figure out like what you believe. And I think that's also a thing, right? Too, is it's like, it's kind of fluid too for me, it's very fluid on like week to week basis of like, I'll have a conversation with someone and it's like, oh, you know what? That's a really interesting idea. And now I kind of like, maybe it is something more. And then I'll talk to someone else, be like, or like read a book on consciousness or something, be like, nope, it's nothing. Or like whatever it is. Like, and sometimes I read a book on consciousness and say, oh wait, no, it is something. But like, I feel like week to week, I'm in a different place. So I am very excited to hear what you think happens when we die, at least right now.
Okay. Well, I really hope
mindset.
I really hope I don't disappoint you, because I did have a horrible migraine, so I actually did nothing, and I've gotten no research done. But truly, like, when I initially emailed you, like, I think it was weeks or months ago, and I was like, what are the questions? Like, I want to know, I want to research, I want to be prepared. I don't want to sound stupid. I want to have an interesting answer. And also, these are still questions like I'm sitting with too. And so I don't necessarily even have an answer for them. So I'll try my best to give one. But again, earlier to your point, because I suffer from a lot of imposter syndrome. So it was very liberating for me to be like, well, no one knows the answer to this question, so my answer doesn't really matter. And that's fantastic. But also that this is something that's going to continue to evolve and change for me. So, but I am a curious person. I want to dive into research. If my whole life could be writing the Hello Mortal newsletter, being a doula and helping people transition through death, and then just like reading, I would be so content.
Can I be like your assistant or something? Like, how can I join in on this? Because this sounds great.
Sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm ready. What's the first question?
What do you think happens when we die?
What do I think happens when we die? So I don't know if anyone's done this yet, but I would then pose a question back to you of like, what happens to what? Our body, our consciousness. And that is the question that I struggle with. I'm like, okay, well, what are we talking about? And I think that's the question in itself, though, too.
Totally. And I think part of it is it's like, I think probably in some ways a more succinct question would be, this isn't going to sound succinct because I haven't really workshopped it, but it's like, what do you think afterlife is?
Right, exactly.
But I think that also kind of pushes.
Or do you believe in one?
Exactly. Because I think that if you ask that question, it kind of pushes it to like, there is an afterlife.
Yeah.
And I think intentionally I'm kind of like pulling it back to, what do you think happens when we die? But I do understand that also could mean, what happens when we're dying. But I think, your questions are very valid.
Like that is a question we ask in the death archetypes thing. Is it something? Are you more in the camp of it's something or it's nothing? And I'm totally in the camp that it's something. And I will say that is because of my firsthand experiences being with people as they are dying. And then also just secondhand account stories that I've heard and read and learned into. And also 3, because it makes life way cooler. Kind of boils down to like, if nothing matters, then like everything matters type of thing, or vice versa. So it's like, how do you want to live your life, and what gives you more peace at night? The fact that there might be, or that there's not. And for me too, like, I'm not a religious person. I would say I'm more spiritual, and I'm just starting to get into Buddhism and stuff. I grew up Quaker though. And so I realized, okay, I actually have been meditating my entire life for once a week for 45 minutes on Thursdays, as we used to do as an entire school. So I believe something happens after death. I believe that we all have a soul or a spirit or energy or consciousness, like whatever you want to call that thing. And we all have that. And that exists after our physical bodies, these vessels, die. And so what I don't know yet is if consciousness is separate from whatever that is, or that the energy, the spirit, the soul, all of that, or if that is the same thing. Because as I mentioned, like, I'm still barely gotten to the pool, like I have put on my bathing suit and walked outside, and that's as far as I've gotten of consciousness. So I believe, something happens after.
I came across this word recently that I really love. And I think I mentioned it to my therapist, and it's from this book of like made up words that now this one's in the dictionary or whatever. And it's called Sonder.
Oh, Sonder. Yeah.
And it's this like realization that, everyone around you is also having their own experiences and thinks that they're, and this is butchering it too, right? But it's like that they're the main character. And so one of the things I think about that, I hear a lot about is, and it's hard because all we know is individuality. We only know our experiences. And so I do think about this too, of like, because a lot of people that I've talked to, it's this energy pool. We go back to this energy pool.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I'm always curious about then is, okay, is there individuality in that energy pool for you? And I don't think that's something that I've asked a lot of people. But I think that's the other interesting question. And I think that plays into consciousness and all this stuff is like, is there an individual on the other side or not?
Yeah, like what is personality and all of that. I mean, all you hear, I feel like in the bubbles that I'm in the spaces I'm in, all I hear is that like we are one, consciousness is one, everything is connected.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating question to like, how are we unique, and like what makes us different? And if we are different, maybe we're not different. Maybe it's just like this made up, and it's what we see. And exactly what you're saying, everyone's living in their own reality. And so when we get back to home, or, consciousness, togetherness, whatever you want to call, like, do we feel that difference? And how does that also work if like, okay, I believe in an afterlife, and I believe that like I'll meet my mom in the afterlife, like, and then how does reincarnation work? And it's just like, there's so many questions that then begin to unfold. And
it's a tangled web for sure. Once you start once you try to unravel it, it's like a million questions come up. And I actually love that you're like coming back at me with questions, because usually it's like, what I love about this is having conversations about it, because there's so much involved. I think we're in similar places to some extent of like, I don't know. I don't even know if I put my bathing suit on yet and walked out the door. But you're like deciding is it warm enough to go swimming? Yeah, exactly. But I definitely lean more towards nothing, which I think is where a lot of my fear and anxiety comes from.
Yeah, because that makes sense.
That's, and you kind of mentioned, I don't know exactly how you said it, but it's like, that's not something to necessarily look forward to. But it's just like, it seems like you have some peace around your beliefs and don't necessarily have a ton of anxiety or fear around death.
Yes and no. Like, I think sort of before answering that question, just sort of wrapping up what we're talking about too, is that like, I try to ask myself questions, and I think there's power in asking yourself like the why 5 times, like just like you're like a 5-year-old child, ask yourself why 5 times. And
that's such a great experiment.
Yeah, I try and go as far as I can, and then I want to bang my head against the wall, and then I stop. So like each time I try and go a little bit farther, and that's how I feel with this stuff, because you get to a certain point and it's like, oh, you cannot comprehend it. So it makes it hard to think or talk about it. And so it's just like baby steps, like just continue to take baby steps. And that's what I feel like I'm doing. And I've definitely, like, I have way less fear and anxiety around death than I ever did before. And that is because I'm such a learn by doing visual person, like do things to get over my fears. Like, so working in hospice, a lot of people are afraid of death because they've never seen someone die before. And obviously you can die in traumatic ways, but you can also die in very peaceful ways. And so I think that experience really helped me, because I know that there are ways to die that are peaceful and meaningful. I can't control that, but I know that that's a possibility, and that has helped a lot. I also think, I'm just really grateful for the situation and time I'm in right now of my life, where I get to write about death and dying and impermanence and all of that. And I don't want to die, but it's not necessarily scary to me. Yeah, because I've started to think about it and formulate opinions and beliefs about it. And studies show that people who have a lot of anxiety around death are those who haven't. But on the flip side, you'll see people who are very devoutly religious, and then at the end of their life, they have a lot of anxiety because they start to lose faith in what they believed in.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. Everyone has their own relationship to death, and that's why that brings it back to the death archetypes of how do you view the world. And hopefully that description and those books help you start to take those baby steps to keep going. Your fear of death is ultimately life affirming. You're afraid of death because you don't want to die, because you want to be alive and enjoy your life. So go enjoy your life.
Yeah. And I know this is a huge thing that you talk about basically all the time, right? Is it's we need to talk about this because it affects your life, and just recognizing that you are going to die doesn't have to be this morbid, scary conversation, but it also is a reminder. I love the term of learning about Buddha and, Buddhism and stuff, but it's at least the way that I heard it is it creates urgency in your life. And I really like that of just okay, I should do this now. We should create the thing where we can read books and talk about death and to do all that now, because, and I know that's what we're both trying to do, right? But it's the time is now, because you never know when your time's up, and it's I'd much rather be kind of doing it this way and not really knowing what I'm doing, but feeling like I'm on the right path. And I don't know. I just always worry that it is the societal programming, right? To follow this certain path and plan, and then you die.
Yeah.
And it's okay, I don't know if I really want to follow that.
And what is it? The only thing certain in life are taxes
death
and death.
Taxes.
Yeah. You don't want to get off the hamster wheel and feel like you wasted your entire life. I think everyone should read the top 5 regrets of the dying. There's so much wisdom to be learned from people at the end of their life. And like you said, ultimately it's a life affirming thing. It might feel scary and depressing and morbid, but it's not. And, would love to talk to anyone who's feeling like it is, and try and help them. And I always say, just start with death archetypes and see how it goes. Again, just sort of to your earlier question of my whole relationship with death has entirely evolved, because while I'm not afraid to die, I do not want to die. I want to live the rest of my life. I want to have all these experiences. I want to love and joy and all of that. So if I were to wind up on my deathbed tomorrow for any reason, I'd probably be scared shitless. I have no idea, I'd like to say that I wouldn't be, but I am human. So it's natural to have a fear of death, first and foremost, full stop.
Yeah.
Your fear is not irrational or stupid or whatever. It's totally normal. But if you can start to gnaw at that and knock at that and start to alleviate that fear a little bit, you'll end up living a richer, more meaningful life. And so, when my mom first died, I was so distraught. Like, I did not care if I lived or died. And it was a very dark time for me. And that's when I ended up going skydiving. Oh my God. Skydiving. And I literally, I kid you not, I said to myself, like, before I got out of that plane, I was like, I don't care if I live or die. And I hopped out. And that was an insane feeling, an insane time in my life. And I'm not that same person anymore. But like, these are the things that grief will do to you. And so it's very important to me that we provide people who are grieving with support, and we normalize these discussions so people feel like they can talk about their feelings and places to go. And that lends itself to the whole go big or go home attitude type of thing. Like, it involved relationships, money, like everything, the entire way I was living my life up until now, where it's like, okay, I'm less fearful of all of these things. I know death is going to happen. I know I can't control it. So let me try and live my life every day in a way that is enjoyable, meaningful. Some days are good, some days aren't so great, but we need the reminder, right? And that's why I feel so grateful that I am choosing to spend my time doing these things, and that I can right now, because to no one's fault. Like, we were so much closer to death 200 years ago, and now we are not. And we have the most distractions we've ever had in all of humanity. Like, change has never been greater or faster. And so we need these reminders to slow down and to hop off the hamster wheel and to like not live life on autopilot. And that's what I'm trying to do, I think, with some of my work, is like in content, is like build in these reminders for people. Like, just hold up, wait a second, because we're constantly fighting a battle and a war for our attention, and it's not fun, and it gets us away.
And it's not easy.
Not easy. It's not fun. It's not easy. And all the shit is happening all around the world too. It's like you have to cope with that and process all of that while processing the fact that you're going to die someday. And yeah, it's just nuts. But I do feel like I have come to more of peace, but like, you catch me on another random day and who knows, like,
for episode 2 and episode 3, we'll see where you're at.
Yeah, hopefully you catch me in an existential crisis, because those are fun.
Yeah. Perfect. You'll bring me right there with you.
Yeah.
You were very, very close to answering the last question. If you were to die tomorrow, what would you want your loved ones and your friends and, all of them to know?
I wish I had some like really juicy secret to spill, that I was like some famous
been holding on to this forever.
Yeah. Like how are the pyramids made, or like, I was so and so in a past life. Oh, that would be so fun.
You have time, hopefully.
Right? We'll find out. I think it's really important for me to know. I came across a book a couple of years ago by Dr. Ira Byock. He's a palliative care doctor. It's called The 4 Things That Matter Most. And it's really simple, but so powerful. And it's just like, I'd want my family to know, and my loved ones, everyone, that like, I love you. Thank you. Like, I forgive you if there's anything you feel like you need to be forgiven for, and please forgive me. And that's it. Like, I want you to be able to live your life with peace and no regrets or questions. For me, it really is, speaking from experience of when my mom died, like, what are the things that I wish I could have changed or done differently? And, some of that is like, oh, I wish I could have asked her more questions or done this and that. And not to say that like, definitely don't dwell on those things, but like, we can use past experiences to help us prepare for the future. And that's why like everything I'm doing is helping people prepare for death based on the experiences I have had and professionally and personally with death, to help improve the grief process and like just like the sheer logistics of dying in general. So I would just want my family and loved ones to know that I love them, and that, I want them to do what makes them happy. Just very simple. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's the simple things that are the most important, and sometimes the ones that aren't conveyed, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, all the time. And the other thing I will add there, something that I think is really important and not everyone believes in, but I think it's extremely valuable to have conversations with those people about your beliefs in the afterlife and signs, because I struggled a lot after my mom's death and asking her, the universe, God, whomever, like whatever you want to call it, for a sign that she was here, that she could hear me, and all of those things. And there's some incredible books and podcasts and stories about people receiving like the most insane, undeniable signs. And that's why I just encourage people to, like, what I'd want to have done, hopefully, is talk to my loved ones about signs and all of that. But that's what I'm gearing up to building with Hello Mortal, is this platform for end of life planning, and it goes over those things. So I have things written down here and there, and I've had discussions here and there, but like while I'm building this platform, like I'm building what I want for myself to give to the people that I love.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you like do you think you'll be like a haunter? You know, like I'm going to like bang on doors at 3 a.m. and that's how you know it's me.
Well, I don't know. I don't think I have any enemies right now, but maybe in the future, like who knows?
I feel like I'd do that to my sister and she'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, a whole other question. Like, yeah, well, what's the difference between a ghost and a spirit, or if they're the same thing? And why do seemingly some spirits stay here forever and some don't? And like, you know, like the paranormal activity shows and houses and things you'll see, like where I grew up going to lower school, like we had ghosts at our school that were seen and accounted for by janitors and teachers and people. So yeah, I mean, how cool. Like imagine.
This is going to be perfect for episode 2 when we have you back on. It'll be all about hauntings and your existential crisis.
In 4th grade, we were tasked to do a book report, and we could do it on any book we wanted. And I chose a book about ghosts. So I'm like, there's always been something there for me.
You've been drawn for a long time.
For a long time, yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad that we finally were able to get you on the podcast that you helped create. Thank you for doing that. And
it was all you.
I needed the push. I needed the inspiration. But yeah, I know you have lots of things, and I think, I don't know, I think there's multiple books and whatnot that I'll have to put in the show notes, but I'll definitely reference, you know, and put stuff in the show notes, but maybe you can share a little bit more about where people can find you. I think especially Substack, your Substack is great.
Well, let me know if you need help with the show notes. I can just drop you some links. But yes, Substack. So weekly newsletter on Sundays, hellomortal.substack.com, as well as hellomortal.com. That's just our website that is currently being updated, but you can find on there something called the Death Plan. And that is the wait list for the platform that I'm building to help you with all facets of end of life planning, from digital password management to conversations about signs to ethical wills, funeral preferences, advance directives, everything your lawyer is not doing for you, I will cover. You can also book time with me on hellomortal.com through the Death Doula box for a free consultation. And then obviously Death Archetypes, take your death archetype. And that's pretty much it. Yes, host a dinner. Email me if you want tips on how to host a dinner. Happy to send them your way. It's very easy. And yeah, I mean, if this conversation sparked anything for you, I would just say, please, like emphatically share it with someone else and ask them, do they believe, you know, all the questions you asked me, and, you know, start having those conversations because they're interesting.
They're fun. They are fun. They don't have to be scary or more. I mean, there's nothing that we talked about that I think you could describe as morbid.
Right.
Like,
and
really,
there's a classic line. There's like, just like talking about sex won't make you pregnant, talking about death is not going to kill you. Like it's lightning is not going to strike down and take you out right then and there. And honestly, I'd be like, I'm not crazy. I'm like, I want to be struck by lightning. Like, give me some savant superpowers. But like, yeah, it's just a conversation.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and it was good to chat with you.
Likewise. This is great.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of When We Die Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked some thoughts and helped you feel a little more at ease with the idea of death. Remember, this journey is all about exploring our beliefs and fears together, so I'd love to hear from you. Call our voicemail at 971-328-0864 and share what you think happens when we die. Your thoughts might just be featured on a future episode and could help others on their own journey. Until next time, have a good life.